Peace and blessings be upon you, in the name of God, the most gracious and the most merciful. All glory and praise belongs to God, and salutating with salutations to the beloved and all the beloveds of God, who include Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his holy family. Thank you so much for tuning into our 21st Healing is Believing podcast series. And today we will be discussing about spirituality and children. Joining me is our co-host Imam Saab, the delightful, all the way from Europe, and also Dr. Isa White Muhammad from Orlando, Florida, and myself, QW. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Isa. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Saab.
Wa alaikum salam.
Well, before we divulge into the subject of spirituality and children, I wanted to let our audience know that it's going to be very exciting because the commencement with the month of August here in Orlando, Florida, we will be starting to teach sessions and coursework on truth and spirituality. So please do tune in to our website for the open house dates, which will be announced in Orlando, where you can find out information on our curriculum and what we will be offering to our audience who's seeking to have more insight on energy, consciousness, all your questions that you have been trying to seek answers for. And we're here to help all of you. So if you'd like to also get in touch with us directly, feel free to email us at info@thedivineclinicfoundation.org. Having said that, I'd like to open up the discussion as we talk about spirituality and children. And it is such a vast subject with a lot of insight. And I'm just going to pass this on to Dr. Isa. Being a parent yourself, how we can incorporate, inculcate, and help our audience, our listeners, parents, and going through the challenges and the essence and importance of teaching spirituality in children. So, Dr. Isa, if you can please start off.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is such a dear and wonderful topic, not only to myself, but to millions of parents throughout this country and throughout the world. When we speak about spiritual children or developing a spiritual child, we're really talking about parenting, how to develop the inner strength of that child, how to get that child to become more in tune with the God within her or him, so that they can be more fluent in understanding what God is, what the spiritual essence of the world is. Now, we're not talking about religion. It doesn't care. It doesn't make a difference if you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Catholic, a Buddhist, a Hindu, or anything. Because spirituality is the inner connection, listening to that God within you. Sometimes, you see children, and they're looking at a butterfly or looking at a leaf on a tree, or they're looking at a bug, and the parents and the adults are saying, what is this child doing? Why are they playing with this thing? Why are they playing with this blade of grass? They see the God within that blade of grass. They see the peace within that blade of grass. They see the essence with them. The importance of spirituality with children is that once they understand it and have it, they become better beings. It's been recorded that a child that has a spiritual base, they are 60% less likely to be involved in drugs, alcohol, or any other substance, not even smoking. And if they have a spiritual base, they are less likely to be depressed. And we have depression among children, especially in the Western Hemisphere, from an assortment of things. No, we haven't seen a time like this before when our children are on Prozac and Ritalin and other types of medicine to calm them down. But the essence of it is that we as the parents, we have to embrace spirituality within ourselves, and then the children can see that we are lovers of nature. And that's what spirituality is. Loving of nature, listening to the God within, listening to and watching the God that's around you. In essence, if we do this, then we will teach our children, and our children will grow up to have the characteristics of God. Not that he or she will be God, but that they will see the God within them. For example, QW, when we look at you, for example, Imam, when we look at you, we see a divine element within you. We see the spirit, the love, the perpetual energy of goodwill. So then we say, oh, QW, oh, Imam, you remind us of God. Not that you are a God, but you remind us of the characteristics of the God. Then, once the children have that, then they grow up to become what? Leaders, or a better word than leader, a savior to the community. All right, because they create an atmosphere where other children follow them. My son, for example, and I brag on him a lot because he has the essence of spirituality with him. Now, as a Muslim, one time when he was small, he was about 6 or 7 years old, and we went to a church. And this was a quite large church, maybe 600 or 700 people were in attendance. Before the minister spoke, my son just left the pew where I was, went into the front of the church, and told the church before the minister that he had something to say. And what did he say? He was talking about the love of Prophet Esau and how we should emulate that. Now, who was speaking with him? Who was speaking to my son? It was the spirituality, the God from within, that was enunciating a message to those around him. Do you follow me?
Beautiful. Yes, well said. Mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about is the creativity and the creation of the spiritual growth of our children. And these are the things that will help save our world, save our families, save ourselves. Now, Imam, he can take it a little bit farther than I, as he is the theologian of all of us. Go ahead, Brother Imam.
Alhamdulillah, very elaborate way of introduction. Yeah, I don't think I can top that. Alhamdulillah. I myself, I'm not a parent myself. Yeah, but however, I do understand from the countless cases. Every single day I'm on the phone. I'm communicating. I'm meeting. Physical interactions with parents. And what I've seen is that those parents who are going through the most suffering, honestly, their children are the most blessed. For some reason, it's just the way it happens. And consistently, I'm seeing this all the time in our work, in terms of our reach. And, coming across these children who themselves, now when you look at it from a very exoteric dimension, you see that these young children are exposed to certain trauma within the home, which is very unbalancing, because a child is meant to develop naturally, organically, with love, as you say, and with nourishment of the heart and the soul and the mind. All of these things are holistically working together to create that child into a better person of tomorrow. The problem that we have is that in most of these cases where there's affliction of negative energy, right, be it, from whichever angle. I mean, there are many factors in which you can, imbibe negative energy on yourself, your person, in your home, which we've talked about in various other segments prior to this conversation. But when a child is exposed to that environment where, a husband is always belittling his wife, I mean, what type of characteristics are we instilling in our children when you look at it from a very physical perspective? But then let's look at the spiritual, because that's fundamentally where the books are not teaching you this, right? So when we're looking at the spiritual aspect of the spiritual conditioning of that child, we're seeing that this child who's supposed to go through this kind of very balanced life. Now, we understand in the worldly terms that, with our children, it's very important that we give them a balanced lifestyle, a balanced diet, the importance of all of these things. So What about the balancing of the spirit? Because when you're exposing that child to constant toxicity, because maybe the parents, and again, the parents are not to blame, but it's the system and the environment which they are in, and the situation, circumstances that they're in, that they are way in over their heads. For example, you know, people react to different situations differently. So when you have a situation where it may be a single mother working 2 jobs to put food on the table, to pay for the rent, you know, that's hard work for a woman. That woman has got to be very, very strong. And then the child also, if she has any children, she has to play that mother role, and she has to give them all the nourishment and everything else. But you see, with life, it comes sacrifice. One thing comes at a cost of another, you know. So when we aspire for the world and worldly things in a way that is not balanced, what can happen is that our relationships with our children and their growth and their development is also compromised. And that is very important to understand, is that if we don't look after our children's spirituality from the base level, then we're going to run into problems later on, especially when they become adults. Now, if you look across the spectrum of science and studies and scientific studies, when you talk to psychologists, for example, and they say to you that statistically, you know, abused children, there's a high chance that these abused children end up becoming abusers themselves. Why? Because they haven't learned how to process what has happened to them, right? And, you know, there's damage that has happened there. And and this child doesn't understand what forgiveness is, and there's remorse, and there's guilt, and there's all these other situations of fluctuation. Now that child is going to grow up to be a parent possibly as well. So now we have another danger on our hands. You know, we have a community that is filled with pickpockets of individuals who have not learned how to deal with emotional energy in a very productive way, in a spiritually balancing way. And that's why, you know, in essence, what we do with the spiritual cleansing of the home is that we take care of all of the, you know, there's an element of where we look to kind of cleanse the environment of the home, because energy, like oxygen, like the oxygen in the air, you know, it hangs around, you know, and there's a reality to all of this. So what about energy? What about sound? You know, does that leave sort of a devastating effect as well within our homes? If we're not dealing with that energy, what happens to that energy? What's happening to our children when they are looking at these situations? How is that changing them? I think it's very important to understand, because the children are, majority of the time, very non-vocal. They, you know, we're seeing now as well, we're seeing a longer delay in children's development. Right, you know, across the world. In these are developing countries, or developed countries, I should say, like the Americas, Europe. You know, where I am at the moment, in the UK, you know, over in Birmingham. You know, places like this, we're seeing a high number of children who are born and their speech is coming at a much later stage. So why is that? Clearly, there's this whole society is becoming more technologically advanced, but we as a unit, a family unit, are becoming, you know, spiritually backward. I think, you know, we're taking, and you know what was you were touching on some very interesting topics there about, you know, your son, for example, you know, what he said and what he was inspired with, and that's beautiful. Because why? Because you see, the thing is, what children have and what adults lack today is innocence. Children have innocence. You know, right. And that's why the divine inspiration of God can run through a child like no other person, like no other adult, unless the adult himself has reached the state of which we call a perfection of the self, perfection of himself. You see what I'm saying? And that's really the ideology, or that's the end goal, really, of every single human being who's looking to attain a form of spirituality. We're saying, listen, do you really want to stop at where you're walking down the road and, you know, everything is in wonderment and amazement? Do you really want to stop there? Or do you want to continue on the spiritual ladder in learning more and more about yourself? And the only truly way in learning more about yourself is through the suffering of others. That's the way I've been taught. That's the way my teacher was taught as well, you know. And that's the way that I feel that is the way moving forward, that the only way that we understand the beauty of God is through the suffering, you know, through the healing of the suffering of others. You know, be even on a social level. There's so much good work going on around the world. Honestly, I cannot commend humanity enough. The way that the local governments are coming together to tackle homelessness, the way corporations are coming together to help tackle certain social issues. Of course, people's hands are tied because of certain, certain politics and certain laws that are, fixed and things like this. Of course, we're going to get that everywhere. But if you see on the whole, you see that humanity is working very hard. The people are giving up their time doing charity work. People are working 12-hour days, but they're still working, finding time on the weekends to spend, on the wards of cancer patients and burn victims, to go there and to give some morale boost and things like this, to spend time with people. This is very beautiful. We are seeing a surge, I believe, in the way that spirituality is affecting our lives in a very beneficial way today. I just believe that, a lot of people have this kind of negative viewpoint of the world, and this is very toxic, because if you hold a very negative viewpoint of the world, you are carrying that toxicity with you no matter what. Wherever you go, you're carrying that bad energy with you. And yes, it's very toxic. You have children around you, they're innocent, you're going to involve them into this. You are an accomplice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that children will follow what you do. So therefore, if you are praying, meditating, doing zikr prayer, and coming in tune with the God within you, and you demonstrate.
I think we lost Dr. Isa. Are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Dr. Isa, are you there? Hello?
It's just reconnecting.
I see. Okay. Did you want to elaborate while he's just reconnecting back with us? Did you want to just share some of your points as well?
Innocence is true beauty. And unfortunately, we're living in an era where innocence is actually taken away from children. And because of all the media influences that we are going through on a daily basis in terms of taking that away. And so what happens is that consciousness of the child is more of a low level. And they get attached to their surroundings, feeling that's everything. That's the icing on the cake, but there's more. There's more to life, and there's deeper because of the visual, of the conjecture, of the now, of the instant gratification. That the element of spirituality is something of the unseen. It's felt. There's patience. There's perseverance. There is dedication, and there's a lot of steadfastness. And to really get to know yourself and to believe that there is a higher power and oneness, and it is really to when you are in an environment where there is a lot of nature and away from the distractions of the world, from technology, which we need, but at the same time having boundaries on them allows us, to tap into ourselves on a deeper level, like reflection. We know in meditation, zikr meditation, the powerfulness. If every school implemented that, from all your public, private schools, had a daily practice of reflection, how would our lives be, And allowing children to get to know themselves, and then not being in an imbalanced state or, able to handle matters of bullying, to the stresses of life and mental health. But then it also comes down to the values, because with the progress of development of civilization, there's also been a loss of the values that were, the foundational values have kind of, kind of dwindled or become dim. And what we're really doing at the Divine Clinic Foundation is reviving the classical Islamic teachings to get people to what true Islam means. What is the truth of it? We are, pure beings, and we're just here to purify, so to, cleanse ourselves, cleanse our homes, cleanse our environment, so that we can all live in true peace. And it's like, it comes back to the saying of brotherhood. It's important that we all, God created us all differently, but the message is the same. And for us to live harmoniously, And and that, because of all politics, has created such a division, and we see the outbreaks of civil wars and political, leaders wanting to take control of communities. And then that essence of spirituality just from last week is lost today, and there are youths that can't even come to the places of worship because they can't. They're finding that there's a disconnect between their lives and then what they're being taught. So it's a very fine line in terms of teaching, because the books will only teach you so much, but then when you come in the hands or in the direction, get guided in the direction of somebody or of a being that is close to Allah because of their connection and inner wisdom, is the greatest gift that can guide us all to get back and help our ummah, help us all of humanity. And truly, that's what we stand at Divine Clinic Foundation, is really about unifying all of us. And we can't change the world, just like you had said last week, Imam Saab, but it's about changing yourself. And hopefully when you change yourself, it comes back to the notion of, you change yourself, you change, your inner environment and your, house, community, and it grows. And it just takes one true believer, and you can cause a ripple effect.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, just to add to what you were saying as well, because you put it very beautifully there. I think what we have to do, and I'm trying to at the moment as well, to our listeners, trying to add back Dr. Isa back to the conversation.
Can we let's just pause here for one moment. Okay.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Isa, welcome back. Alhamdulillah. We had a bit of a technical glitch there, folks. But Dr. Isa, alhamdulillah, is still with us, and he's well. Alhamdulillah. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
What was your seclusion?
It's good to be back. I was just talking. I said, what's happening here? Yeah.
You gotta love technology, right? It's pros and cons.
But I'm telling you, you see, the wisdom and the work that we're enunciating tonight is so heavy and so strong that it's blowing up the wires.
Yeah.
You see, this is something that has to be said, and it has to be understood, because we're talking about developing children and teaching them how to understand the spirituality within themselves. I don't know where I left off at, but I know one thing is that if we want to save the world that we live in, we have to find the proper process of tuning into the spirituality of our children, because they have something, and we have to nurture them and work with them so that they can be a stronger entity within our world. And you see, if we don't do this, they will carry on the same nonsense that we have. I am so blessed, to be honest with you, that I'm part of this divine clinic, this healing process. I'm so blessed that I'm able to enunciate my feelings and this testimonial to the world about the essence of our children. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah. Because
the reason why it's important is because the inner God within them represents the pillars of the new world. We always pray for somebody to come. We're always talking about, can we change things for the better? Well, listen to the children. They have a clairvoyant spirit. They have a connecting spirit to the good angels. Today, when I left the masjid after Juma, my son, we were in the car just talking, and he said to me, Dad, there was a negative energy. A negative energy. All right? Coming out of the masjid. Then he said, there are some people around you, Daddy, that felt negative. It is not anything that these people said to me. It's not anything that they said to my son. or anything that they did to us. Very nice people. But their inner soul was corrupt. You follow me? The inner soul. So my son said, we have to stay away from them. Or we have to do what? QW? We have to cleanse them.
Right.
You see? And once the children feel this, they understand good. They understand essence. Remember, the first element of spirituality and miracle was Esau speaking to the masses when he was an infant. That's something. So the point is that we have to cleanse ourselves. We have to be better people because our children follow what we do. If we're smoking, they smoke. If we're using profanity, they use profanity. If we're looking at porn, they look at porn. If you're smoking marijuana and taking crack and cocaine, guess what? They're going to do it too. They're not going to do what you say. They're going to do what you do. But if they see us getting closer to the spirituality of the God, they will also become closer to the God within themselves, and they will not have the negative forces of the world. It's like the scripture says, they will be in the world, but what? Not of the world. And that's when I see the Imam, he is in the world, but he's not of the world. When I see QW, she is in the world, but she is not of the world. She and the Imam are walking at a different level, at a higher plane, because they tapped into the intelligence of the spirituality itself, and which they're trying to teach us. I mean, all I can say after that is all praises are due to Allah, and all praises are due to the friends and the families I have within the Divine Faith.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. You know, your compliments, I have to say, Dr. Isa, you know, it's...
You're too kind.
Yeah, you're very kind. Alhamdulillah. You know, the reality is, though, is that if you can see that, though, then you, sir, you are part of that same process. You are part of that
It's
you know,
like
that happening.
Like attracts like, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So, you know, we have to say that, and this is the thing, it's about bringing like-minded people together for a discussion, you know, in terms of understanding that, look, no community, yeah, I don't care how many businesses you have, and, you know, whether you have Microsoft, Google, whoever, you know, in any given area, district, right? But the reality is that if you know, you can have 100 houses, 2 million houses in that place, but the reality is that you got no people to fill them. Where did the people come from? They are the children, right? The children grow up, become adults, become part of society, which they already are, but, you know, in terms of more of an integrated force, you see? So we have to understand that there is an importance upon ourselves, a clinical and a spiritual responsibility towards looking at our homes, removing all toxicity, removing and understanding our own spiritual elements and essence. Because without essence, there is really nothing. You know, prayer, worship is dead without essence. You know, what is essence? You know, essence is not something you can carry in your hand, right? You know, it's something that you have to, it's a process, it's a system. But that system is something that is from the unspoken world, like the Quran itself. It didn't materialize from the Holy Prophet sitting at a desk, you know, writing down copious notes. But no, it was with the Holy Prophet connecting to something that was not of this world, you know, something divine, God himself, you know, through the wasila or through the intercession of the angel, right? The angel of all angels, right? Jibreel or Gabriel, as he's also known as well. You see? So there's this link of intercessionhood as well. I say that, you know, when we look at parents, for example, the parents are that bridge, that gap between that child and God. So, like you said, Dr. Isa, just to kind of bring it into perspective, is that, yes, you're right, that child is looking at the mother and father and looking at a way of emulation. He's saying, well, I can behave like this because my parents behave like this. So if your parents are good, then you, by and large, will also be good as well. If you had good morals instilled in you from, you know, a young age, then this will also be something that will manifest later on in life. But you see, the problem today that we have is that children are being sort of, they're being sidelined because of, we lead busy lives today, right? So the children are not getting as much focus or attention as they would do 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, right? There's less activity happening. The rates of obesity are rising. There's a massive drive on a social level to get children active again. Why? Why are we having to go through all of this? We're basically, as we become technologically more advanced, we become more lazy as a society. We become, we're taking everything as a back route approach. If we can just accept, and this was covered in our last podcast as well, where we said accepting the testing. Yeah? That if you can accept that God himself, yes, you're having to work very hard, you're having to put food on the table, you're having to do this, do that, but then you've also got this test of being a parent. And yes, it's difficult, but you know what? God does not give a soul more than he can bear. So you got 4 kids and 4 mouths to feed, then you know what? You just got to get up and go. You've got to develop that attitude. If you haven't got, and if you haven't got that drive and you can't put it within you, then go to those people who can help you, support you. Because that's what this is all about. It's about becoming a larger community, but only by connection. A community does not become a community, just by itself. It doesn't spontaneously become a community. It only becomes a community by coming together. And the biggest thing of unifying us and everyone else is children, right? Everybody, is united in the welfare of children. Yeah? And we must stand against injustice, the injustice happening to children today, that things that, like, for example, the things that we come across, I don't really want to disclose it on the open air, but there are situations where there's abuse, there's child abuse happening, as well. So then, we have to put into place measures that are there also with the local laws as well, right? So we have to cover ourselves in terms of making sure that the child is safe on a social level, right? Because there are concerns, there are needs, because people often at times, the sensibility of them as well has to be called into question. You are responsible for bringing life into this world, then you are responsible for raising that child. Yeah? You can't just suddenly say, well, I'm not interested in becoming a parent anymore, I'm just going to leave. It doesn't work like that, You can't just keep throwing in the towel because, you see how many children today, single mothers with kids, yeah? Shocking number. Why? Because we live in an age of decadence where a man is free to sow his oats and then leave the woman as and when he desires. Move on to the next one. In some cultures, and I'll tell you this now from my own experience, with people around me, myself, that, it's almost like oh, how many children do you have? Oh, I've got so-and-so, but I've got this many baby mums as well, right? It's like an accolade now. It's when you think about it, spiritually it's disgusting. Yeah? Spiritually it's disgusting. Because why? Because these women, they've got, you've had to lead them. They're left with no support. They're left with nothing. And we're looking at the child, we're looking at the mother.
Hello?
We're looking at the family as a complete unit. Ourselves are responsible for the breakdown of these communities. We are responsible. It doesn't matter whether we are the same race or the same religion. No. It doesn't matter. This is all our responsibility. We cannot take this type of attitude lightly and say, yeah, this type of behavior is fine and it's acceptable. It's not acceptable. Yeah, it's not acceptable. If you're going to take a relationship with a lady or with, however your orientation is, that relationship has to be based on trust, sincerity, and love. It's very important, love, because that's what that relationship is teaching you. Every single relationship that you embark on in this life, and I'll give you some words of wisdom from our teacher, is that every single relationship that you embark on in this life teaches you more about yourself than it does about the person you're with. Always.
Absolutely.
You cannot come out of a marriage or a relationship or anything, say, Alhamdulillah, you know what? It's been the best 20 years that I've had with you. I know we have to go our separate ways. But, however, I've learned so much more about myself. Thank you for teaching me patience. Thank you. When was the last time we had a conversation like this with our spouses? When? I don't know. We've gone away from being honest with our hearts because out of fear that, will be ridiculed, or that our dominance in the home will be... and the reality is, if we look at the relationships of even the Holy Prophet and his family, and we look at the prophets of the past with their relationship with their wives, it was about a respect. Yeah, it wasn't about saying, oh, we're coming together because we have the same kind of, bank balance, or we have the same social values. No, it's about that we have the same respect towards God, that we will respect each other for his sake. And in doing so, bringing life into this world, that we will also respect that life. Because that life is worth precious. It's precious. Every child is precious. Every child, as we speak on this podcast now, countless number of children are being abused all around the world. Yeah? All around the world. And this is having a very tremendous negative spiritual impact on them. That if we don't deal with, and if we don't get involved as a community, then we only have ourselves to blame, ultimately.
I would agree with that 100%.
100%.
What we have to have along with that is a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And what is a spiritual awakening? It's a sense of inner peace, true happiness, so we can protect our families, protect our community,
Sorry, the connection is as though it's cutting out again with Dr. Isa. Are you there?
Isa, are you there?
It's reconnecting to
I see, okay.
Dr. Isa. I think we lost him. It's still intermittent.
Okay. So we're still having some glitches at the moment.
Yeah, we're having, this podcast, is so deep, and we may have to even, we just got disconnected again with Dr. Isa. Just hold on.
Feeling at one with everyone and everything. Talking about spiritual awakening, inner peace, true happiness, no matter what the circumstances, Feeling and having unconditional love. We have to teach our children that have unconditional love. Most of us don't have unconditional love. We say, I forgive you, but. I love you, but. And we as Muslims, we play it off in this way. I love you in the state of Allah. You put a footnote to it. All right? Unconditional love is true love for all living beings, no matter what. And once you get this unconditional love, this true happiness, and then you're on your way to what? Spiritual awakening. All right? Then you know your path. And that's where we are. All right? We have to be completely cleansed to do this. No other way. You can't put your foot around it. You can't jive it. You can't play with mama daddies and mama, whatever you call it. How do you say that?
Baby mamas, right?
Whatever the social context is these days. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like baby mamas and so forth, this type of bragging rights. I mean, it's uncalled for, it's unnecessary, and it's disrespectful to women. It's disrespectful to family values as a whole, You're right, completely right. We must empower the home, the families again. We must empower them with the understanding that every action that you do, the child will have a reaction to that action.
That's right. That's right. We have to protect, and we have to do everything to work and keep strong families, but families that are cleansed, families that are spiritually aware, families that are spiritually centered. You cannot have a family that's productive that is not spiritually centered. I don't care how much money you may have. For example, we're to lead this country in a more holistic manner that people will want to emulate. When was the last time we had a spiritual president? I think the closest one was Jimmy Carter. He was constantly trying to get into his inner self. I don't know about the leadership in England or France or Germany or Italy.
Well, on that note, Dr. Isa, we could see the state of the Americas, of the way the condition is, because 50% is of what had voted for at least a little bit over 50 votes, electoral votes, that as opposed to popular votes, but very neck to neck, and that shows the state of the people's inner selves when we are choosing our leaders. What is the condition of our heart? Because that would reflect, the spiritual status or the status of what we're trying to advocate, what we were born, and then live in harmonious, environments and have peace. And the secular life has taken over, and spirituality is looked as, the value of spirituality is dim, and you can't see it, but you feel it every day when someone says something and how you react to it. And it's one thing to negate the feeling and how you react to it, but your heart knows and your heart feels.
I mean, if you're left out the spiritual center, what do you have? Addiction, depression, insomnia. You have a dysfunction in yourself, and we even, as Imam once stated on another broadcast, that even our religious leaders are void of spirituality. A few nights ago, I went to a religious venue, a masjid, and to make prayer. Now, after prayer, Imam was talking, and he's saying some really nice, interesting things about family and life and so forth. Very intriguing. Then I went to ask him a question. Instead of even allowing me to ask my question, he started to reprimand me about my attire because I had a ring on. I said, well, what's wrong with this fellow?
It's always the way.
Yeah, with all the problems we have, he is more concerned about something I had on my finger.
Yeah.
He was void of spirituality because he was a fool. There's a story that Esau has in the Bible that says, don't be the ass with the books. And that really means that you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't understand the books and the knowledge that you have, you will be an ass. You'll be dumb. You'll be a donkey. And I spoke to a donkey who did not understand his spirituality and his role in helping people. I hope he's listening.
I can understand your frustration there, Dr. Isa. But, like I said, this is not really about, judging anyone in this way. What we're saying is that, look, I can vouch and say that this person has got some bad energy with them. And the reason why I can say this confidently to you, I don't mind. I will stick up for whatever I've said, ever in all these podcasts, whatever I've said. I will hold true to my word in saying, I'll hold true to my beliefs, right? In saying, yes, there is a fitna, there is this injustice that is happening to our communities. I don't believe the leaders themselves are listening. I mean, even today, I personally went with some associates. I went to a religious establishment to talk about, spiritual health and mental health, the link, especially with the women in our communities, and what were they doing to tackle it? And that's what I really want to get to the bottom of. And, they were more interested in understanding what were your papers, right? Where did you study? What country do you come from? I mean, when you look at the messages in the Quran itself, and I know we're deviating slightly from the original conversation, but when you look at the Quran itself, it doesn't mention, when it says the messengers came with what? They didn't come with papers, they didn't come with they came with a message. And in the same way ourselves, when we're coming with a clear message about, well, we want to understand our community better, and we want to understand, well, we are dealing with this type of affliction on a daily basis. What steps are you taking as a hub for the community? What steps are you taking, and can we be of service to you? This is the thing. And, we're opening our arms in friendship, but, they're crossing their arms in sort of exoteric drool and drabbage and stuff like this, because they're making assumptions based on the fact that, well, who are you to speak about this? Yeah, unless your face is on the billboard or it's on TV, that's the only really way that people will ever understand, what you're trying to say, because now you have a social status. It no longer becomes about the message anymore, but it becomes about seeing you, being seen with you, because you are a man of status. And that's why the Holy Prophet himself, he mentions in the Quran where he said that when he reached this, accolade, this status within his community at that time, the followers, they would just come in and out of his house whenever they wanted. They felt they had a right to do that. This was the Holy Prophet, by the way, yeah? That God revealed the ayah in saying that those who are with the Prophet, who spend time with him, spend little time and then make your peace and leave. Do not overstay your welcome. Like, do not look at his wives in a derogatory way or anything like this. Why? Because the wives of the Holy Prophet had light around them, which the people themselves couldn't understand. Because, again, the way that we talk about spirituality and science, the way it all comes together very beautifully, they didn't have access to those knowledges then. So there was no way the Prophet himself could explain it from a perspective that is not part of the syllabus of life at that time. Yeah? Because it didn't exist. You see? The discoveries weren't made and they weren't, plentiful as they are today. We have knowledge at our fingertips, but we are asleep as a nation. That's the reality. The learned among us are the most dangerous. Yeah? Because they have been conditioned to believe what they believe in, and they won't accept anything else. They'll say, no, if a woman comes into our center and is suffering, we'll just refer her onto the psychologist, yeah? Well, she's got a mental problem and that's what it is. But what we're saying is, no, we need to understand this in saying, well, could there be more? That's what we want to explore. Could there be more to this? And what we're saying is we want to open up that discussion with our communities, because we're all part of one community. We all follow the same book. We all pray in the same direction. So if all of these unites us, then really when you look at the children and what we're talking about, the children are the foundation of any, then take the relevant steps to learn more about yourself, because you owe it to them. Forget about God. Forget about God completely. There's no point talking about God and preaching, because Christians have been preaching God and the Bible on the streets all over the world for the last 2,000 years, right? It's not going to change. We're still going to have preachers on street corners. That's never going to change, right? What we need to start talking about is the effects of our children. How are they being affected? Is your child experiencing development delays in learning? Is your child suffering with recurring nightmares? Is your child suffering with seeing things that aren't there? If this is the case, then get in contact with us, because you owe it to that child. The sanctity of that child's soul is in your hands as the parent. We speak to you directly as the listeners. Inshallah.
Thank you so much, Imam Saab, for that concluding remark. That really is what hits on the nail in terms of what we are trying here to help. And we all have free will, free choice. And if people recognize that the free will to take that step closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the direction of those who are connected, who are only here to guide one so that they may live a life with ease and peace. And with that, I'd like to thank you also, Dr. Isa, for joining us on today's podcast. And we'll probably be evaluating this, and may have a segment 2 on this, as this subject matter is depth, and a session of 50 minutes is not sufficient also to sum it all up. But I'd like to thank our audience for taking the time to listen to our podcast today on spirituality and children. And should you have any questions, please email us at info@thedivineclinicfoundation.org. That's info@thedivineclinicfoundation.org. And also to hear our previous podcasts, you can tune in on our website or iTunes, and you can find the podcast available at www.thedivineclinicfoundation.org. I'd like to say thank you, Dr. Isa. Thank you, Imam Saab.